I've always craved the solitude of the wilderness, a place to escape the chaos of my job, endless travel, demanding clients, the grind that never lets up. In early fall of 2018, I headed deep into the forests near Mount Rainier in Washington state, far from any official campground or trail. It was just me, my tent, a Bowie knife for utility, and a hatchet strapped to my pack. The air was crisp with the scent of pine and damp earth, the kind of isolation that makes you feel like the last person on earth, or so I thought. That first night, after hiking miles through thick underbrush, I set up camp in a small clearing surrounded by towering evergreens. The fire crackled softly as I ate a simple meal, the flames casting flickering shadows that danced like whispers in the dark. Exhaustion pulled me into sleep, but sometime in the dead of night, a faint rustling woke me. It wasn't the wind or an animal scavenging. It was deliberate, close. My heart thumped as I unzipped the tent flap, the zipper's teeth grinding like a warning. There, just a few feet away, sat a man by the remnants of my fire. He was ordinary looking, in jeans and a large hooded jacket that might have been a Carhartt, his face partially obscured but well groomed, like he hadn't been out here long. No backpack, no gear, just him staring blankly into the glowing embers. When our eyes met, his widened in shock, as if I were the intruder. Before I could utter a word, he scrambled to his feet and bolted into the blackness of the woods, branches snapping under his frantic steps. I sat there, frozen, the cold night air seeping into my bones. Was he a lost hiker? Maybe high on something? I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was a fluke in this vast wilderness. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the canopy, turning the forest into a mosaic of greens and golds. I packed up quickly, unease lingering like a fog. I hiked 10 to 15 miles that day, veering off in random directions through dense thickets and over fallen logs, no trail to follow. The solitude felt heavier now, every snap of a twig making me glance over my shoulder. By evening, I found another secluded spot, built a small fire, and tried to relax, the flames my only companion. 2 nights later, as I sat by the fire poking at the coals, the rustling returned. It came from the shadows beyond the light's reach, deliberate footsteps crunching leaves. My pulse quickened. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice echoing faintly against the trees. A voice drifted back from the darkness, calm but disembodied. "Do you know how to get to Bell's Canyon?" Bell's Canyon? I'd never heard of it, and nothing like that existed around here. I grabbed my flashlight, shining it toward the sound, but the beam caught only trunks and undergrowth. "Hey, put that away," the voice said, almost annoyed. I lowered it, a chill crawling up my spine. Why hide? What was he playing at? The questions kept coming, random and disjointed. "You see any deer out here? What's the weather supposed to be like? You camping alone?" Each one felt like a probe, testing me. 15 minutes dragged on, my nerves fraying. Finally, I couldn't take it. I flicked the light up again. There he was, the same man from before, standing just at the edge of the firelight, his eyes locking onto mine with that same wide stare. Panic surged through me. How? I'd hiked miles in erratic paths. No one could have stumbled upon me twice by accident. He had to have tracked me, stalked me through this endless wild. He turned and ran again, vanishing into the night. I grabbed my hatchet and chased for a moment, adrenaline pumping, but stopped short. The darkness was a maze, and getting lost would be suicide. Back at camp, I doused the fire, huddled in my tent, knife in hand. Sleep evaded me. Every whisper of wind sounded like footsteps. Who was he? What did he want? The forest, once a sanctuary, now felt alive with threat, like eyes watching from every shadow. The decision came at dawn. I had to get out. Packing swiftly, I plotted my route back using a compass and a nearby stream as landmarks. But escaping wasn't simple. It would take 3 days of hard hiking. I doubled back on my path, hid behind boulders, waited motionless for hours to see if anyone followed. Paranoia gripped me. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter with each passing mile. That first night on the hike out, I pitched my tent in a hidden thicket, too exhausted to go further. As darkness fell, the circling started. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, looping around my tent. Once, then silence. An hour later, again. I gripped my knife, breath shallow, straining to listen. Was it him? I peeked out, flashlight sweeping the perimeter, but nothing. Just the empty woods, mocking me. The second night was worse. Distant noises echoed through the trees. At first, like an animal rustling, but then shifting into something unnatural. Howls, low and eerie, too human to be wildlife, too deliberate to be coincidence. They rose and fell, circling closer, then fading. My mind raced. Was he mimicking calls to toy with me, or signaling to someone else? I didn't sleep, just stared at the tent ceiling, sweat beading despite the chill, imagining him out there, patient, waiting. By the third day, exhaustion blurred my vision, but fear propelled me forward. I pushed through brambles that clawed at my skin, over ridges that stole my breath. Every rustle, every shadow fueled the terror. I was prey in a game I didn't understand. Relief crashed over me like a wave when I spotted my car in the distance, parked at the trailhead. I stumbled to it, locked the doors, and drove away, tears stinging my eyes. Only at a hotel, seeing another human face, did the panic begin to ebb. But the terror lingers. I didn't report it. Who would believe me? No attack, just a shadow in the woods. Yet I know he was real, hunting me for reasons I'll never grasp. The wilderness near Mount Rainier, once my escape, now haunts my dreams. Solitude turned sinister, a reminder that in the vast unknown, you're never truly alone. It was about 5 years ago, fresh out of college, when my buddies John, Bennett, Kyle, and I piled into my old truck for our annual bro camping trip in the Oregon woods. We'd been doing this every August since high school, a chance to unplug, reconnect, and escape the grind of everyday life. Oregon's forests had always felt like our backyard, dense evergreens towering like silent guardians, the air thick with pine and the earth. We drove deep into the wilderness, far from any marked trails, until we found our usual spot, a small clearing about a mile from where we parked the car. No cell signal, no other campers, just us and the wild. We set up our 6-person tent, unpacked the coolers, and kicked off the trip with high spirits. The first day was pure bliss. We hiked through sun-dappled trails, the crunch of leaves under our boots mixing with our laughter and banter. By evening, we had a roaring campfire going, grilling burgers and cracking open beers as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges. S'mores followed, sticky and sweet, while we shared stories from the past year, jobs, girlfriends, the usual. The fire crackled softly, sending sparks dancing into the cooling night air. Crickets chirped in the underbrush, and a distant owl hooted, but it all felt comforting, like the woods were alive in a friendly way. We stumbled into the tent, buzzed and content, zipping up the flap against the chill. Sleep came easy that night. Our second day mirrored the first, more hiking, exploring hidden streams where the water ran cold and clear over mossy rocks. We fished a bit, though we caught nothing worth keeping, and by dusk, we were back at camp, firing up the grill again. Beers flowed freely, and soon we were wrestling around like idiots, tackling each other in the dirt, laughing until our sides hurt. The fire cast flickering shadows on the trees, making the forest seem to shift and breathe around us. But then John froze mid-grapple, his face draining of color. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his eyes darting to the dark tree line. We paused, straining our ears, but all I caught was the wind-rustling leaves. I shrugged it off as a squirrel or the beer playing tricks, and we resumed our roughhousing, though a subtle unease lingered in the air. About 10 minutes later, as we grew tired and decided to call it a night, we doused the fire with a bucket of water from the stream. Steam hissed up, and the campsite plunged into near-total darkness, save for our flashlights cutting thin beams through the black. That's when it happened. A slight cackle echoed from the woods nearby, sharp and unnatural, like someone mocking us from the shadows. I spun around, heart skipping, assuming it was one of the guys messing around. "Very funny," I muttered, shining my light on Bennett's face, but he looked as pale as a ghost, his eyes wide. "That wasn't me," he breathed. Kyle chimed in, voice shaky. "Wasn't you?" We exchanged glances, the buzz from the beers evaporating into cold fear. No one was laughing now. We hurried into the tent, zipping it shut with trembling hands. I rummaged through my pack and pulled out the axe I'd used to chop wood earlier, our only real weapon in this isolated spot. We weren't at a proper campsite with rangers or neighbors. We just wandered in and claimed this patch of earth. A mile from the car, no signal. If something went wrong, we were on our own. I positioned myself at one end of the tent, axe gripped tight under my pillow, Kyle and John in the middle, Bennett at the other side. We lay there in silence, the nylon walls thin and fragile between us and whatever lurked outside. My mind raced. Animal? Prankster? Or worse, some deranged wanderer high on meth, drawn to our firelight like a moth. The minutes stretched into hours, the forest sounds amplifying in the quiet, branches creaking, leaves whispering secrets. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that fatigue and alcohol were amplifying our paranoia. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I dozed off, the axe handle digging into my cheek like a grim reminder. I jolted awake to that same menacing laughter, closer now, slithering through the night like a serpent. It wasn't joyful, it was twisted, laced with malice that sent chills racing down my spine. I froze, every muscle tense, not daring to breathe. The axe was still under my pillow, but reaching for it felt impossible. Then, horror compounded, a faint pressure against the tent fabric, like a finger tracing a slow, deliberate circle around us. Moonlight filtered through the trees, casting elongated shadows on the walls, a silhouette probing, testing. Whoever or whatever it was, they were right there, inches away, walking methodically around our vulnerable shelter. My heart hammered in my ears, drowning out everything but that insidious cackle echoing sporadically. The intruder completed their circuit and paused at the tent's entrance, the zipper flap rustling faintly in the breeze. Silence hung heavy, thick with dread, for what felt like an eternity, maybe 5 seconds, but it stretched like hours. Then, without warning, the tent shook violently, poles rattling as if in an earthquake. A blood-curdling scream pierced the air. Boogity, boogity. The voice was guttural, unhinged, followed by another burst of that mocking laughter. Kyle let out a high-pitched scream, confirming we were all awake and terrified. The shaking stopped abruptly, and footsteps, or what sounded like them, crunched away into the underbrush, fading into the night. We huddled there, wide-eyed and silent, the axe clutched in my sweating palms. No one spoke. We didn't dare move, fearing the intruder might return, lurking just beyond the trees. The woods, once inviting, now felt hostile. Every snap of a twig a potential threat, every shadow a hiding place for something malevolent. Was it a meth head scavenging the forests, a psychopath on the prowl, or just some sick prankster? Or something unexplained, drawn from the dark folklore of these ancient woods? The isolation pressed in, our breaths shallow and synchronized in fear. Dawn crept in slowly, gray light filtering through the canopy, banishing the night's terrors but not the memory. We packed up in record time, axes and flashlights at the ready, scanning the tree line for any sign of our visitor. There were none, no footprints, no traces, just the lingering echo of that laughter in our minds. We hiked back to the car, vowing never to camp so remotely again. These days, we stick to legit sites with people around, and I always pack a gun alongside the axe. The Oregon woods are beautiful, but they hold secrets that laugh in the darkness, turning adventure into nightmare. Stay safe out there. The wild isn't always what it seems. I've always been at home in the wilderness. As a kid, I lived for nearly 2 years in a remote house on a nature preserve in Wyoming, where electricity came from a generator and we hauled water from the creek to boil it. Emergencies meant waiting an hour for help, if it came at all. I've hunted dangerous game and witnessed strange things in the desert night. The wild doesn't scare me easily, but the Cascadia mountain range in Washington, that's different. Something about those dense, ancient forests sets my nerves on edge like nothing else. I'll never venture there alone again. It started when I was 23. My friend Darren invited me on a camping trip to a secluded spot deep in the Cascades. It was just me, Darren, and his buddy Wade. We drove down a rugged back road, then hiked about an hour up a logging trail to reach the site. A pristine small lake, barely touched by humans. From the logging road, it was only a 10-minute descent through the trees. I was thrilled when we arrived. The water shimmered under the overcast sky, and there was leftover firewood by the pit, a sign someone had been there recently. We cooked chili and hot dogs, and as dusk fell, the guys unearthed a sealed bucket they'd buried the previous year, full of MREs. It felt like the perfect adult adventure. But that night, something shifted. Lying in my tent, I couldn't shake an inexplicable uneasiness. The forest sounds, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, felt off, almost watchful. I chalked it up to not camping with my dad like in my youth, or maybe the isolation. Darren had his .38 special for bears, but we were otherwise unarmed. Sleep came in fits, broken by the patter of rain starting at dawn. We tried to tough it out, but the downpour soaked everything, forcing us to pack up and head home early. The beauty of the place lingered, but so did that nagging tension. A year later, the itch returned. Darren and I decided to try the site again, but this time, I wasn't taking chances. I convinced more friends to join: James, Charles, Rita, James's girlfriend, and our big white German shepherd, Moogie. 6 of us total, plus the dog. Remembering the unease, I brought my 12-gauge shotgun, and James packed his .308 rifle for some off-range target practice. We even hauled a quad ATV to carry extra water, booze, and supplies, making the hike easier. We arrived under gray skies, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. As we set up tents, loud music blared from the south end of the lake near the logging road. Curious and a bit annoyed, James and I, armed and feeling bold, hiked over to investigate. Emerging from the tree line, we found a cop on a casual fishing trip, his radio blasting tunes. He stayed remarkably cool, eyeing our weapons but not flinching. We chatted amiably at first, mentioning our group but keeping our exact spot vague, just nearby. Then things turned strange. The cop pressed hard for details on where we'd camp, almost aggressively. He raved about his favorite spots, insisting we try 1-2 miles further down the logging road. His tone shifted, implying it was the only safe place where we wouldn't get in trouble. When Darren joined and mentioned we'd gotten permission from the landowners years ago, the cop's face soured. He doubled down, pushing the alternative site like our lives depended on it. We lied, saying we'd check it out, but his insistence screamed trap, like a horror movie where the shady authority leads you to doom. Back at camp, paranoia set in. "That guy's setting us up," James muttered, scanning the trees. "Hillbillies waiting to jump us, or worse." We stuck to our site, unloading the quad and building a fire. The afternoon passed with laughter, floating on our giant inflatable raft, shooting at cans and jugs, Moogie barking at squirrels. But as twilight deepened, the forest closed in. The rain held off, but the air grew heavy, shadows lengthening like fingers across the lake. Night fell, and the unease returned, sharper this time. We sat around the fire, stories flowing, but I couldn't relax. Moogie growled low at the darkness beyond the flames, her hackles up. Then came the sounds, subtle at first, like whispers in the wind, a rustle that mimicked footsteps circling our camp. I gripped my shotgun, heart pounding. "You hear that?" I whispered to Darren. He nodded, eyes wide. It escalated. Shadows in the tree line seemed to shift unnaturally, elongating into human-like forms that didn't quite match. Too tall, too fluid. We shone flashlights, but nothing was there, just swaying branches. Then the calls started, faint echoes of our earlier laughter bouncing back from the woods. Rita's giggle, distorted and hollow, floated from the north. Charles's deep chuckle answered from the south, but we were all together, silent now, frozen in dread. Moogie whimpered, pressing against my leg. "What the hell is that?" Wade hissed, grabbing a log from the fire. The mimics, they're real in these woods, things that imitate to lure you out. Urban legends whisper of them in the Cascades, demons or entities that steal voices, drawing wanderers deeper into the trees. I'd read accounts online, dismissed them as tall tales, but now a branch snapped nearby, too deliberate. James raised his rifle, sweeping the scope. "Something's out there," he said, voice steady but strained. The echoes grew mocking, overlapping our hushed words. We didn't sleep. Huddled in tents, weapons close, every creak amplified the terror. The forest felt alive, intelligent, watching, waiting to mislead. By dawn's gray light, we broke camp in silence, loading the quad hastily. The lake's beauty was tainted, the mountains looming like sentinels hiding secrets. As we hiked out, a final echo trailed us, my own voice calling from behind, "Wait, come back." That trip changed me. The Cascades hold something ancient and cunning, mimicking to ensnare. I'll camp again, but never solo those woods. The dread lingers, a chill reminder that some places aren't meant for us. I never believed in the paranormal until that backpacking trip in college. It was early April, and the chill of winter still clung to everything in Appalachian, Ohio. 8 of us, me, a handful of fellow students, and 2 experienced leaders, piled into vans and headed to Zaleski State Forest. I'd heard whispers about the place, haunted tunnels like Moonville, where ghosts of old miners were said to wander, and strange sightings that locals attributed to ancient spirits or something wilder, like Bigfoot lurking in the shadows. But I shrugged it off as folklore, excited for the adventure. We hiked miles into the forest, our packs heavy with gear, the trail winding through barren trees that clawed at the gray sky. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Zaleski felt isolated, a pocket of wilderness where the modern world faded away. By late afternoon, we reached the backpacking site, a large cleared square encircled by dense woods, like an arena carved out of the wild. A few other groups were there, some friendly older couples chatting by their fires, and 2 college-aged girls setting up nearby. But we pitched our cluster of one-person tents farther back, right against the tree line. Mine ended up at the rear, with nothing but the dark forest breathing down my neck. As dusk fell, the energy shifted. I've always been sensitive to places, and this spot hummed with something heavy, almost watchful. The leaders built a small fire, and we shared stories under the stars, but the laughter felt forced against the silence of the woods. No birds sang, no wind rustled. It was as if the forest was holding its breath. We doused the flames early, zipped into our tents, and I drifted off to the distant hoot of an owl, the cold seeping through my sleeping bag. Around 2 a.m., I jolted awake. Crunching leaves echoed just behind my tent, slow, deliberate steps that sounded too heavy for a small animal. It wasn't the scamper of a raccoon or the light tread of a deer. These were bipedal, like a person trudging through the underbrush, circling my shelter with purpose. My heart pounded as I lay frozen, straining to listen. The footsteps paused, then resumed, tracing a lazy loop around the fabric walls that suddenly felt paper thin. The breathing started then, low, ragged inhales and exhales like a human mouth heaving from exertion. It came close, so close I could almost feel the warmth through the nylon. Whatever it was stopped right outside, as if pressing an ear to the tent, listening for my own breath. I held mine, terror gripping my chest like ice. Was it a prank? One of the group? But no one had stirred. The camp was dead silent, except for this intruder. It moved on after what felt like an eternity, the crunching fading toward the other tents. I imagined it, weaving between them, probing each one, its heavy footfalls marking a relentless patrol. Hours dragged by like this. Circle, pause, breathe, repeat. My mind raced with stories I'd dismissed. Indigenous spirits said to guard these lands, protective ancestors watching over campers, or darker entities drawn to the living. Zaleski's reputation for unexplained phenomena flooded back, shadow figures in the tunnels, disembodied voices echoing through the trees. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cold, my body rigid under the sleeping bag. I wanted to unzip the flap, to shine my flashlight into the night, but fear rooted me in place. What if it saw me? What if it wasn't human at all? The footsteps looped back to my tent, closer this time, the breathing deeper, more insistent, like it was savoring the fear seeping from inside. Then, without warning, a warm glow illuminated the tent walls, a soft, ethereal light that pulsed gently, casting elongated shadows across the fabric. It wasn't a flashlight beam. There was no flicker, no sound of movement from the camp. No one had stirred. Our group remained asleep, oblivious. The light hovered as if suspended in the air, probing the darkness like an eye searching for something hidden. I sensed intelligence in it all, an otherworldly awareness, testing our resolve, circling like a predator assessing prey. Appalachia's weirdness was real. Tales of strange lights and circling entities weren't just myths. This thing breathed with intent, turning the familiar woods into a void of watchful dread. My thoughts blurred with exhaustion, the footsteps a hypnotic rhythm that lulled me despite the terror. Finally, sleep claimed me, the sounds fading into uneasy dreams. Morning light filtered through the tent, and I emerged shaky, the forest now bathed in innocent dawn. The others stirred, brewing coffee over a rekindled fire. "Did anyone hear that last night?" I asked, my voice trembling. My leader nodded slowly. "Yeah, those footsteps. Bizarre. I was too groggy to check." One of the guys chimed in. "And that light? Thought it was you turning on a lantern." But no one had moved. No bathrooms breaks. No lights flicked on. We exchanged uneasy glances, the air thick with unspoken questions. The older couples nearby picked up cheerfully, oblivious, but our group fell silent as we broke camp. The cleared square felt exposed now, the encircling trees like silent sentinels hiding secrets. We hiked out without a word about it, the trail seeming longer, more oppressive. That night in Zaleski changed me. I've avoided those Appalachian trails ever since, haunted by the memory of that unseen entity. Whatever circled us wasn't an animal or a prank. It was something ancient, breathing with purpose, turning the wild into a living nightmare. The forest watches, and sometimes it draws close enough to whisper your name. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.